Hello students, today we are going to deal with communication for development. So, first let us see the meaning and importance of communication in development. The word communication originates from the Latin word communis, which means common. That means we share common thoughts, feelings and ideas with the person with whom we are communicating with a commonness of understanding. We make use of speech, writing, printed and pictorial matter, gestures and expressions, also of technical media like telegraphy, radio, television, computer, etc. for communication. Usually communication is a continuous process of giving and receiving information and building up social relationships. So, concisely, communication is a process by which two or more people exchange ideas, facts, feelings or impressions in ways that gains a common understanding of the message. Let us see what are the characteristics of communication. Communication is a two-way process. It involves a sender and receiver who can be an individual or a group. They can also be a message. This deals with the information or a directive or an inquiry, a feeling, an opinion, an idea or any other instruction also. Third thing is commonness of understanding. Communication can occur only when there is commonness of understanding between the sender and the receiver. This includes the factors like common culture, common language, common environment, words, phrases, idioms, proverbs, gestures, expressions that are deeply cultured and also possess high communicative potential for people from similar background. Next characteristic is modifying the behavior of other individuals. This is the main purpose of communication, where the information transmitted to the receiver receives a response in the form of some change in the behavior of the individual. And next characteristic is method of giving information. The information can be given through words or through other means like signs, gestures and expressions, etc. The importance of communication has been widely recognized in recent years, and the need for effective communication becomes clear when you go through the following statements. Human existence is impossible without communication. Information is every individual's need. Through communication, information need is satisfied. Individuals make decisions every minute and communication helps in decision making, where the family or any other institution for that matter cannot function without communication, and this can be achieved through coordination and cooperation. Education aims at behavioral change. Intended behavioral change can be achieved only through the communication, and disputes and conflicts are settled through negotiations. That is also one form of communication through which the peace and harmony is established. Individuals vary in capacities and efficiencies, where the communication demonstrates individual efficiencies, and also individuals vary in their performances through effectively evaluating the individual performance. And every second many changes occur in the world. They keep people informing about those changes. Leadership action, which is impossible without communication between the leader and his followers, that is main basic for the leadership action. And whether the teacher or the student, lawyer or client, marketer or consumer, whether it is a farmer or an extension worker, or wherever it is the work goes on, the job satisfaction is very much essential, that provides through the communication process. Regarding the purpose of communication, first and foremost things, the organization are large in number, and the people working in the organization to achieve a common goals are employed for the sake of showing the organizational hierarchy through communication, and this leads to the coordination and also synchronizing all the activities of various groups or departments of the organization. So, finally, it leads to the smooth working of the enterprise or the organization to a greater extent, where you can have a very good communication network. Effective decision making also is one of the important aspects which will be contributing towards the organizational success through communication. So, whether it is past or present, they are being provided for quick and effective decision making. All the figures will be communicated by the organization to the people working there. So, an effective communication network which supplies information helps in arriving at quick decisions, problem defining, alternative courses of action, selecting the best course of action are all possible only with necessary information supplied to the decision maker. Managerial efficiency. This is also one of the important component of communication process which will be contributing for the success of an organization. Management is an art of getting things done through other people. It is communication that will be educating the people working in the organization about the goals, policies and targets by issuing orders and instructions orally as well as in written form. Therefore, managerial efficiency lies in the way the manager communicates with the individual or group in an organization. Next one is cooperation. Cooperation among workers are possible with the exchange of information between the individuals and groups and between the management and the employees. Cooperation promotes industrial peace and maximum production. A leader leads his followers through a continuous process of communication. Communication is the basis for directing and motivating the follower, and the followers in turn follow him by conveying ideas, opinions, feelings and facts. Openness and frank expression of opinions from both sides lead to job satisfaction. It is through communication the workers can be well informed about the process of production, new methods of production, the activities of the workers in a similar organization. So, a good system of communication helps in management to achieve maximum productivity with minimum cost and by elimination of waste. Morale building. When clear instructions are given to the employees, it is easy to achieve the goals of the organization. In turn, the management needs to appreciate the works of the employees. An effective system of communication builds good morale and improves the human relationships and also encourages the employees. So, participatory communication is the best technique for morale building and motivation also. A manager normally performs 3 roles: interpersonal roles, informational roles and decision roles. Communication plays a vital role in all these 3 types of roles. In the case of interpersonal role, a manager has to interact with the subordinates. In the information role, he has to collect the information from various people and supply it to the others both inside and outside the organization. A manager in a decisional role takes important decisions based on the interpersonal and informational communication. Elements and process of communication. The communication can be expected to have taken place only if the message is encoded by the sender, that is relayed with use of signals and subsequently decoded at the destination. This process occurs basically due to the presence of 5 important elements of communication. The 5 basic elements of communication are source, receiver, channel, message and finally the feedback. Coming to the first element of communication, source. This is the originator of the message who is an individual of formal or informal institution, and he is the person who is initiating the message. Second element is message. This deals with the package of information or the content to be transferred to the receiver. Message deals with the package of information or the content to be transferred by the source. In fact, message is the physical product from the source that supplies information, create feelings and impressions and changes the attitudes of the receivers. And next one is channel. This is the carrier of message. It may be natural, but involves one of the sense modalities like seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, or it may be artificial such as newspaper, radio, television, telephone, etc. The next element is receiver, and he is the final consumer of the message in the communication process. All the factors which determine the success of the source in communication process are also applicable to the receiver, that is communication skills, attitudes, knowledge level and socio-cultural context. The last element is feedback. Without feedback, any communication is never complete. Feedback means carrying some significant responses of the audience back to the communicator. Adequate and correct feedback is essential for purposeful communication. This also provides an opportunity to take corrective measures by identifying subsequent activities and acts as a pathfinder for enhancing communication effectiveness. Next, ways of communication. The first and foremost way of communication is one way. The one-way communication is transferred in only one direction, that is from the sender to the receiver. There is not any opportunity for the receiver to give the feedback to the sender. Next type of communication will be two-way communication. This is a form of transmission in which both parties are involved in transmitting the information. Two-way communication has also been referred to as interpersonal communication. So, the common forms of two-way communication, I can just give you some examples like amateur radio or different types of FM radios, where for short range you have radio contacts, and through the devices like walkie-talkies or other instruments, the information can be interchanged or transmitted. Chat rooms, instant messaging, computer networks or in-person communication that is related to the business within the organization, all this is nothing but two-way communication. And here you can just resolve the problems more efficiently, fastly, quickly, and generating long-term relationships are possible by resolving the problems and setting everything right. Telephone also is a very good example for this two-way communication, that can be between neighbors or friends or even the business. The last way of communication is interactive communication. As noted earlier, communication is a dynamic interactive process. It consists of 5 steps, that is ideation, encoding, transmission, decoding and response. The first step, ideation, is the formation of idea or selection of a message to be communicated. It consists of the what of the communication and is concerned with the content or the specific message to be presented. The second step in communication process is encoding. It is the main process where the information is being changed into some form of logical encoded message. It is based on the purpose of the communication and also the relationship between the sender and the receiver. It involves selecting a message and selecting a medium of communication and also selecting an appropriate communication. And the next aspect in the process is transmission. This refers to the flow of message over the chosen channel. It confirms the medium selected during the process of encoding and keeps the communication channel free from interference or noise, so that the message reaches the receiver without any disturbance. It is one of the most basic aspects of communication, because it also involves choosing the proper time when to communicate or proper place where to communicate and a proper way how to communicate. And the next aspect in the communication process is decoding. This is the process of converting the message into thoughts by translating the received stimuli into an interpreted meaning in order to understand the message communicated. It is important to note that it is the message that is transferred, as meaning cannot be transferred from one person to another. The receiver has to assign meaning to a message in order to understand it. And the last important element is response. The response is the last stage in the communication process, and it is the action or reaction of the receiver to the message. It helps the sender know that the message was received and understood. The feedback that goes to the sender makes it clear whatever the receiver has accepted the information and filled it in his or her memory or rejected it. He or she may ask for more information and clarifications also. So, response is thus the key to the communication, as the effectiveness of the communication depends upon how congruent the receiver's response is with the meaning intended by the sender. The first one is intrapersonal communication. Communication that takes place within oneself is intrapersonal communication. No other person will be involved here, and there is no provision of feedback, or also it is just an internal process. Interpreting maps, text, signs and symbols, communication between body parts, saying that my stomach is telling me it is time for lunch, or day and night dreaming, all these are examples. Interpersonal communication. This is basically communication between two or more people, and it is very informal, such as when you talk to a friend during lunch break, or when you just communicate to your teacher regarding registering about a course, all these things. So, common functions in interpersonal communications are nothing but just listening, talking and discussing. And the third one is group communication. This communication occurs among 3 or more members, and it is based on number of individuals, and it can be classified into 2 types, small group and large group. In the small group communication, it will be at least between 3 members of the group, and also at the maximum around 12 to 15 members. Example for this type of communication is a professional group, an educational group or a social group communication. Here they will be having a common bond and an interest and a goal also. So, or a family of 3 talking at a dinner table, all these are very good examples for small group communication. Large group communication refers to communication in big organizations having a large number of individuals, including communities brought together by a need or a self-identification. They can be people of a particular geographical area as the people of the village or a town. People who have gathered in hundreds to attend conventions, seminars or conferences can also be a very good example for large group communication. Any organization, there will be 2 types of communication, that is basically formal or informal communication. Formal communication takes place along the lines of the authority, and this will be established by the management. There are clear guidelines on who should communicate with whom and how to communicate the information. So, the policy manuals, rules and procedures, reports and books, memoranda, official meetings, all these come under the formal type of communication. Formal type of communication has many advantages. It helps in fixation of responsibility, maintaining the authority relationship, and the disadvantages are generally with the procedures to be followed, many times the misunderstanding or distortion occurs regarding the rules and regulations. Another type is informal communication. This is usually built around the social relationships among the members of the society. There will not be any rules and regulations, and they are almost like channels of communication arises due to personal needs only. And this is really difficult to fix the responsibility on part of the accuracy of the information. So, the information also can become the rumors, and usually it is oral in nature, and with just a simple glance, gesture or a smile or silence also sometimes becomes informal communication. And it is not possible to identify the source of communication also. We can say there the communication ends also. And then another one is mass communication. This is the term used to relay information to large segments of the population at the same time, and it refers to the newspaper, magazines, publishing, radio, television, films, etc. It is also used for disseminating news and giving some advertisements also. Factors that help or hinder communication. All the communication should try to persuade and not rush or overwhelm the people. There will be lots of barriers, and those should be overcome through persuasion only. Proper arrangement also should be made to obtain the feedback, and sooner you get the feedback, the sooner you will be able to change your mode and improve the communication manner, and then only the communication will be effective. Always the sender should make sure to whom should the message go, why am I communicating, what are my motives, decide what to communicate, be clear about what you need to communicate, choose the best time for optimum reception, use language the receiver can understand and which is unambiguous, choose a location which will not interfere with the reception, understanding and acceptance of the message, keep checking with the receiver. Receiver always should be fully attentive, listen actively, ask for clarifications, reception where necessary, keep checking with the sender. So, to facilitate communication, you should have a positive attitude about the communication. Defensiveness interferes with the communication. Work at the improving communication skills. It also takes knowledge and work. The communication model and the discussion of barriers to communication provide the necessary knowledge. This increased awareness of the potential for improving communication is the first step to better communication. One should make communication goal oriented, relational goals come first and pay way for the other ones. When the sender or the receiver have a good relationship, they are much more likely to accomplish their communication goals. Approach in communication as a creative process rather than simply part of the core of working with people will become almost like a lack of communication and meaningless communication. Vary channels, listening techniques and feedback techniques are also very important. Accept the reality of miscommunication. The best communicators fail to have perfect communication. They accept miscommunication and work to minimize its negative impacts. The barriers of communication. There are many types of barriers of communication. The first and foremost are physical barriers. Emotional disturbances like traffic noise, loud sound, passing train, time and distance, personal problems, health also comes in way, poor hearing due to defective hearing or poor presentation due to speech defects like stammering, lisping, etc., poor verbal skills also comes under the physical barriers. Noisy transmission, unreliable messages, inconsistency, difference in the communication very often becomes the barrier, like non-availability of the proper machines or presence of defective machines and wrong channels or medium also becomes the mechanical barriers. Coming to the mental barriers, from the sender's point of view, ignorance of the language and confused thinking are the mental barriers. From the receiver's point of view, ignorance of the language, limitations, inability, intelligence and understanding, divided attention are the serious mental barriers. The semantic problems occur when people use either the same word in different ways or different words in the same way. So, the choice of words or the language in which a sender encodes a message will influence the quality of the communication. Receiver distortion. This is selective hearing, ignoring nonverbal cues, voice control, pitch, modulation of voice, helping in making communication effective. This is very important in the field of communication, and this should be taught properly by the communicators also. Coming to the cross-cultural barriers, effective communication requires simply converting the basic values, motives, aspirations and assumptions that operate across the geographical lines. Socio-psychological barriers are values, attitudes and opinions. Preconceived notions like we judge people before they speak by allowing our opinions and ideas of them come in the way of trying to know what the speaker is saying. Assumptions like seeing others situation same as yours has the same feelings as you comes under these socio-psychological barriers. Status effects like power struggles, defensiveness, distorted perceptions, guilt, projection, transference, distortions from the past, negative emotions, distrusted source, erroneous translation, value judgment, state of mind of two people comes under the same type of barriers. Interpersonal relationships also are some type of barriers which affect the communication in perception by the past experience with the individual, or also affected by the organizational relationship between the two people. We shown through an example from a superior, he may be perceiving differently than that of the side of the subordinate or a peer. Any questions?
Ma'am, what are the common semantic problems in communication?
Semantic problems occur when people use either the same word in different ways or different words in the same way. That is nothing but the gap between the receiver and the sender. It can be in the form of a language, or it can also become in the form of behavioral non-verbal cues also. So, misreading of the body language may lead to the semantic problem, or the tone of the person who is sending the message also may lead to the semantic problems. And even the behavior of the person who is sending the message also may mislead by just interpreting the message in a different way also. The receiver may think the message in a wrong way, and that will be misunderstanding between the receiver and the sender also. Selective hearing and also ignoring also sometimes becomes a semantic problem. So, we have to take care so that the receiver listens properly and interprets in a correct way. So, with this we complete the lesson of communication and its elements and its meaning, and thank you.